Thank you very much. Starting with Gary and working our way over, who are you and what did you do with F1?
Well, hello everybody. My name is Gary. I actually live right here in San Rafael. So this is a real treat. This is a real treat. I am a re-recording mixer, and what that means is I work in sound, and I work with the director of our film, Joe, directly in a room just like this with a big audio console right in the middle, and we control all the sound, dialogue, music, and sound effects to make it sound like, well, hopefully exactly like it'll sound tonight.
Yeah.
I'm Claudio, the cinematographer for the movie. I'm responsible for image and creating some unique cameras to how we shot this thing. And the whole idea between us is to keep it, keep you immersed in the sound and also the visuals, and everything's connected. So I really feel like you're going to be on a ride on this movie.
I'm Jerry Bruckheimer. One of the producers of F1.
Let's start with you, Jerry. You've been producing, you're no stranger to high-octane films with fast cars. You made Days of Thunder, you made Gone in 60 Seconds. What was it about F1 that was different for you, and were there things that have changed in filmmaking that you wanted to express creatively that you maybe couldn't have 2 decades ago?
Well, what's different about F1 is it's the only sport where your teammate is your competitor. There are 10 teams, 2 drivers to each team, and each driver wants to be the #1 driver. So the drama is embedded in the sport, and that's what makes it so exciting. As far as technology, they will talk to you about all the phenomenal things that they brought to this movie. For those who haven't seen the film, Brad Pitt and Damson Idris actually drive these cars. It took them 4 months to learn how to drive them. You just don't get into an F1 car and drive it. An F2 driver takes them a month to figure out how to drive an F1 car. We built 6 cars. We have an F2 engine and an F1 body over it. The F1 car, in order to start it, it takes 35 people. We couldn't quite afford that. An F2 engine is 2 people. So, but they go up to 200 miles an hour. So, and Brad was pushing the limit on all of it. He loves it. He loved making the movie. His unhappiest day was when we're in Abu Dhabi, and it was his last run, and he was climbing out of the car, and it was my happiest day. He was all in one piece. But as far as the expertise of what Claudio and our sound team did is really phenomenal. First of all, it took him, about a year to build the camera?
We had a thought about it, and maybe about 9 months, maybe, like getting early on and inkling their idea that this job was happening, and then finally start putting it to paper in 9 months before.
Yeah, on Top Gun, we had a camera that was about this big. And we had 6 of them in the cockpit. In F1, we have a camera that's about this big, and we have 16 of them around the car, 4 at a time. So what you're going to experience is you're going to be in that car, you're going to be driving that car, you're going to feel what it's like to be an F1 driver when you see this movie. The authenticity is phenomenal. The sound is phenomenal. How many tracks, Gary, were you mixing?
Thousands. We're well into the thousands, because it's not just the number of car recordings that we have, and we sent sound crews to Abu Dhabi twice to record cars, as well as to test runs on cars. They're very expensive cars to run, so you can't just fire them up and get a good recording. You've got to get them while they're running during the race, and that was another challenge. I'm sure you guys can talk about that. Shooting these scenes during live F1 races. You know, we were capturing sound during these live F1 races. It was a very, very complicated process to gather these tracks, cut these tracks into sync under the scrutiny of our executive producer, Lewis Hamilton, because he knows what these tracks feel like and what these tracks sound like. He can tell if we've used and cheated, curve 3 for curve 5. He knows every track and every curve and every straightaway and what it feels like and what it sounds like to be in that car, on that curve, on that track. He's that good. And so the level of authenticity for this film is unbelievable. We have Lewis Hamilton to thank for that.
He's a 7-time world champion. And so he's a phenomenal asset to this movie. But with all the bells and whistles that we bring to our craft, and a lot of you are part of our community, it's always about the story. It's always about the emotion. It's always about our great writers that bring this authenticity to the screen. I mean, we know how to make movies really well because we have the greatest technicians in the world. Our editor had 5,000 hours of film to go through to cut this movie into over 2 hours. So, and not only the number of tracks he had to put together, Lewis Hamilton was saying, turn 3, I'm in 2nd gear, you have me in 3rd gear. So they had to, and then every car sounds different. So you have to record every single car, and there are 20 cars. So they had to get actual recordings of these cars. And then you add the visual effects, because first of all, our guys drove the cars, but they couldn't drive in real races, obviously. So we had to augment, we had to put our car into real races, and that was done through visual effects. So, and that's flawless. And then, I mean, in order to make the movie, you can't make a movie about F1 unless you get F1 to cooperate with you. And F1 has 10 teams, and we have to sit with the heads of F1, because nobody wants to invite you into their world unless they think you're going to make them look good. And they don't know if you're going to make them. They're very skeptical. When we made Top Gun, the first Top Gun, the admiral of the base told us there's no way we could shoot on that base because it only could hurt his career if something happened. Tom and myself went to the head of the Navy and told him what we wanted to do. He said, I know this is good for the Navy. That admiral was replaced, and we had somebody else. And their recruiting went up 500% after the movie came out. And I think what we did is when we went to F1 to talk to them about making this movie, we brought Brad Pitt with us. And guess what? We had the heads of F1 show up. And that was the seminal point of explaining how to do it. But what we did is we took a piece of film. First we had Joe created a piece of film from Top Gun, how we did Top Gun. So we had an F-18 jet up in the air, and you watched how our great special effects people skinned it to make a Russian jet. They skinned it to make an F-14, which is no longer flying. So those are all things that we did to convince F1 to take the ride with us. The next thing we did is we walked them across the street to a theater and showed them Top Gun Maverick before it came out. So they could see how we could make a film that makes the Navy look good and we're going to make them look good. But then you had to go to the various teams. You go to all 10 teams and convince the principals that it's good for them. Then we had to get the drivers involved, the 20 drivers. So we showed the same footage that we showed F1 to them. But it took us a year to get them to really feel comfortable to see us around the tracks.
Thank you. Claudio, you've made films so incredibly diverse, from Life of Pi to Top Gun Maverick. How did you get involved in this particular film?
It's my 6th movie with Joe, and I've done all those movies, so that's kind of a... We kind of talk about the next job a little bit to kind of be fair. Like when I'm Top Gun, he mentions a little possibility of this movie, and so we always kind of do a little bit of homework, so I kind of have a little bit of an edge over other people.
And did you have a certain approach collaboratively in talking to him about a certain visual style, or certainly you talked about being immersive, about being kinetic. What kind of conversation did you have with him about shooting the film?
Well, Joe and I always think that realism and immersiveness is like priority, right? Everything beyond that, like, synthetic screens or like virtual screens or blue screens are just, they sort of like a little bit suck the energy out of actors, for one thing, as far as acting. When Brad looks like he has to make that turn, he's really having to make that turn, otherwise he'll miss it. And so I feel like that sort of connection, when you see Top Gun, when Tom Cruise goes off the carrier and he does that drop, all of a sudden I think, okay, we're not just doing what people normally do in a blue screen and just sit back as hard as they can go. You don't have that. You have real kinetic energy that's affecting the actors and affecting the drivers. And I feel like you'll feel that. You'll feel the difference between a synthetic environment and what we created, which is an authentic environment.
Gary, you've worked with Joe as well. You worked with him on Tron Legacy.
Yes, I did.
Now, that is a very different film, of course. It's got fantasy elements, sci-fi elements. What kind of conversations did you have with him about doing all the sound and all the mixing for F1?
The early conversations were, we want this to sound as amazing as it can. We want it to sound different, unlike any other sports film that's been out there, or any other racing film that's been out there. We really wanted to have a unique signature. So one of the things that we did was that we did a very elaborate temp mix early on, and we invested a little bit more time than we normally would so that we could explore to figure out really what is going to be the sonic signature for this film. We know that the cars are very unique sounding cars. We have that. We know we're going to have Hans Zimmer deliver something that is so melodically unique that it will give it its signature. But we also just wanted the scope of the mix itself to have a structure that was kind of unlike any other racing film before it. So we spent the time it was in October, whereas the main part of the mix happened later on in March and April. But in October, we spent 2 weeks and we did a deep dive into Acts 1 and 2 to really figure out, what are the announcers going to sound like? What are the communications between our drivers and the crew? How is that going to sit against the score, against the cars? What is the handoff going to be? What are the races uniquely going to sound like? We figured out pretty quickly that these races each needed to have their own signature to it, their own structure to it. Some have music, some don't. Some start without it and then it gets introduced later. Sometimes we're conveying a lot of emotion internally, some struggle within our actors, within our characters, that we're communicating within the race. How do we do that? And it took some experimentation during that temp to kind of figure out, at least structurally, where we were going to land. So it was a conversation, but it was also an exercise early on in the process.
And because the mix is usually done in post, how long did post take?
Well, our sound designers were on and off a year before we even got to the mix, because they were recording these races early on. Al Nelson, our sound designer and supervising sound editor, was on with his crew quite early. On and off, I'll say over the course of a year plus. The mix itself was roughly 10 weeks, including pre-dubs, final mix, and mastering, that's a solid schedule, but it deserved it. We have a big film with a lot of sound, not just the cars. We have Hans. We have a little Led Zeppelin in this film. We have Ed Sheeran in this film. And we've got some incredible performances that were captured by Gareth John, our production sound mixer. A lot of amazing material that needed to be gone through to create what you guys are going to experience tonight.
Okay. All three of you are veterans. You've been making movies for a long time. I'm going to ask you the same question. You can just answer however you want. What did you learn, whether it be a craftsmanship or a technical skill, what did you learn making F1 that you never had to do before?
I just think if you don't ask, you don't. I mean, I just keep on asking questions, because no is a given if you don't ask the questions. And the thing what we discovered about this job, like we're working with, it's an international movie. We're dealing with Mercedes, you know, in London at the base that we were dealing with, and we're dealing with those people that need CAD drawings and they're designing the frames. And that is dealing with my camera company and the camera company that I was using, Panavision, and they're building the mount that spin the cameras. And then Sony's in Japan, and all these cameras are all kind of coming together in one places. But we have to kind of ask the questions of, like, I had to ask Sony, like, you know, I got a little taste of it when they built the cameras for Top Gun, and there was a little bit of special request, and I go, how if you just push it a little bit further, you know, and to see how much can he do and how much can he use whatever I have to kind of influence him to do something for us. And that's kind of what I keep on learning, is like you can keep on kind of just pounding and hounding him and asking, and that's kind of what I keep on learning on every job. Like, even though it's out of your department or out of your immediate zone, you can still go beyond it and ask Mercedes for favors and, like, hey, can I do this? Because initially, just like Top Gun, they said you could only get one camera in there, you know? And we got more than that.
For sound, I think it was a whole other level of collaboration. Like I said, Al Nelson had gone out and started recording these cars well in advance, and that kind of collaboration between a little company like Skywalker Sound, you know, tucked away in Marin County, dealing with Formula One and getting onto the track and getting access and being able to collaborate with a whole separate concept and a whole separate set of people. That was that's relatively new. Doing that kind of collaboration isn't something that happens necessarily on every show, but it wasn't only that, it's also our production mixer being able to get into that environment and being able to record in very different ways. Can we get mics onto the cars, or can't we get mics onto the cars? It's a very, very special level of collaboration happened on this film, and you know, the greatest successes come out of the greatest moments of teamwork, and that's evident in our film and in our story, and I think it's totally true for our sound crew.
Well, first of all, I knew nothing about F1 when I started this movie, absolutely nothing. I did Days of Thunder, but that's NASCAR, completely different. So getting an education into this world was phenomenal. It's an amazing world. To be a driver in this world, you start when you're 5 or 6 years old. You start in little go-karts. And if you're talented, by the time you're 11 or 12, you go to Italy usually, where they have these academies where you can really have enormous competition. And by the time you're 14 or 15, a team might take a look at you or sponsor you or do something like that. But the criteria for a team is you have to be an amazing driver, you have to be charismatic, and you have to be good looking, because you represent a brand. So when you see these drivers, you're going to see them on the screen, the real drivers, you're going to see a lot of them in this movie. We had to film this. It was like filming a live sporting event, because we were on the grid right before a race with Brad and Damson standing next to the real drivers. We did a scene that we had 12 minutes to do it.
Yep.
We had a scene that we had 12 minutes to do it. We rehearsed it for 3 weeks, and the FIA, which is a controlling body of Formula One, timed it because we couldn't delay the start of the movie. I mean, the film, the race. So it's that kind of expertise to make this movie, and you'll feel it when you see the film, the authenticity and the amount of energy and work that everybody went into. Like Hans Zimmer went back to when he started his career. He pulled out all his synthesizers that he hadn't used in years, because that cuts through the sound of these engines. But what's so great about Hans is he writes these beautiful melodies. And after you hear Led Zeppelin, you'll come to the track and you'll hear his melody, and it's played throughout the film. But it really conveys what we want you to feel for each one of these characters. And we had different themes for various characters. And just the amount of work that our team put into making this movie, down from Joe, who storyboarded every frame. It's unbelievable. and he puts it up on a board every day, and he crosses them off as he gets his shots. That's how he was an architect and an engineer. That's how he was trained. He went to Stanford, and he's a brilliant director. So that's his background and how he made this movie with no drama. It was just fun the whole way, and we did it twice because we started in June, we shot for 4 days, and there was an actor strike and a writer strike. So Joe shot a lot of the second unit that year. He went around the world and shot second unit. Came back next year, we got the actors back, and we shot the actual drama. So the amount of time and energy and effort, then it took almost a year to put it all together. And just the number of tracks that they all worked on that he had to mix down into a single track that you're going to hear. And the amount of expertise that he did in creating these cameras. But you're putting these cameras on something that's going 200 miles an hour, so it vibrates. So he had to build these mounts so that it wouldn't vibrate. And he had the cameras all around the car, only 4 at a time. Then he had to figure out, because he had a camera right in Brad's face, but Brad couldn't see the turns. So he had to figure out a space to put in there so he could actually see where he was going. And then you have Joe, who's directing Brad, going 180 miles an hour. We were filming in Belgium, in Spa, which is a very famous track. And there's a turn called Eau Rouge, which is the most dangerous turn in the sport. A lot of drivers have been killed there because you go up a hill and you go to a blind turn, and you actually lift up in the air, you go weightless. And so Brad is doing this really dangerous turn, and he's smiling. And Joe is yelling at him, "You're not supposed to be smiling, you're acting."
That's a great anecdote. Jerry, Claudio, Gary, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
Weekend of films that are contending. So enjoy. Thank you for coming. Enjoy the film, and we'll see you later. Thanks.
Thank you all. Really appreciate it.
Keep going to the movies.